long before humans had large fleets or advanced colonies. There was a small exploration ship traveling through an unknown region of space. It was not a famous vessel, not powerful or well-equipped. It carried a small crew who simply wanted to learn what existed beyond their star maps. They were curious, hopeful, and maybe a little too brave. One day, while passing through a strange, silent part of the galaxy, something went terribly wrong. A hidden gravitational field, left behind by an ancient collapsed star, pulled the ship off course. Engines overheated, power systems failed, and within minutes, the human crew found themselves drifting helplessly in dark. Empty space. They sent distress signals in every direction, but no one expected help to come. At that time, humans were barely known by other species. They had no big alliances, no advanced technology, and no powerful friends. They were simply one young species trying to find its place among the stars. Days went by, supplies ran low, and hope began to fade. Just when everything seemed lost, a small alien vessel appeared on the radar. It was not impressive or dangerous. It looked more like a fragile silver bubble gliding through space. The species inside called themselves the Tavri. They were gentle, soft-spoken beings, much smaller than humans, with thin bodies and careful steps. Their technology was old, and their own planet struggled with limited resources. But they had one strong belief: no one should be left alone in the dark. When the Tavri found the human ship, they could have ignored it. Helping meant using fuel they could not easily replace and risking damage to their own vessel. But they chose to help anyway. Slowly and carefully, they attached their tiny ship to the side of the disabled human craft and began towing it toward a nearby repair station. It took days. Tavri pilots barely slept. They shared their limited food and water. They cared for the injured crew with calm hands and worried eyes. When the humans were finally safe again, they tried to repay them, but the Tavri refused. They smiled in their quiet way and said they did not help to earn anything. They helped because someone needed it. Before the humans could insist, the Tavri simply nodded, returned to their small, aging ship, and drifted away into the stars. Years passed, and humanity grew in strength. They learned to build faster ships, stronger shields, and new colonies. They learned to farm on dead worlds, mine asteroids, and create energy from almost nothing. Over time, humans expanded into dozens of systems. Their population grew, their trade routes spread, and their technology advanced at an incredible speed. But among all their achievements, one memory remained quietly stored in human history: the rescue of a small exploration ship by the gentle Tavri. The story was never forgotten. It was taught in space academies, shared in documentaries, and passed down through families of explorers. People said, one day, if the Tavri ever need help, humanity will repay the kindness they gave us when we were alone. For centuries, the Tavri continued their peaceful life on a modest world far from major trade routes. They avoided conflict, avoided powerful empires, and focused on growing crops, raising families, and keeping their traditions alive. Unfortunately, their quiet existence made them easy targets for aggressive species. One such danger came in the form of the Jal Dominion, a ruthless power known for expanding without mercy. The Jal believed strength was the only language worth speaking. They saw the Tavri homeworld as weak and lightly defended, and they took what they wanted: labor, land, and control. The Tavri, unable to fight back, lived under fear. Their cities were overseen by Jal soldiers. Their skies were filled with Jal patrol ships. Their old traditions slowly faded under strict rules. The Tavri elders still remembered the humans they once helped, but they had no contact with them. They did not know if humans still cared or even remembered them. Most believed sending a call for help would be useless. But one night, in a quiet underground shelter, a small group of Tavri debated a desperate idea. Maybe humans would listen. Maybe the ancient story mattered to them. The group found a forgotten communication device, something left from when the humans first visited. It no longer worked properly, and most of the codes were outdated. Even so, they tried. They rewired pieces, repaired what they could, and sent the message out into the void. The message was short, almost broken, a tired voice saying only, "Old friends, if you hear us, we need help." Then silence. The Tavri had no way of knowing if the signal reached anyone. They had no way of knowing if humans still existed in the same part of the galaxy, or if humanity had moved on and become too powerful or too busy to care about a tiny species like them. But that night, after sending the message, the Tavri sat together with hopeful hearts. It was all they could do far away, deep in human space. The message reached a listening station on the edge of a research colony. The station received thousands of signals every day, most of them random noise or harmless chatter. But when the operator saw the code signature embedded in the Tavri message, he froze. He recognized it instantly from old training manuals. It was the same signature used by the alien ship that saved the stranded human explorers generations ago. A few minutes later, the message was forwarded to several human departments. Within hours, it reached high-level command. Leaders, admirals, and diplomats all watched the incomplete Tavri recording. Even though the message was cracked and faint, the meaning was clear. A species that once saved human lives was now in danger. In the Human Command Council, there was no long debate, no hesitation, no confusion. The decision was made almost instantly. Humanity remembered the debt. Humanity remembered the story that had been told through hundreds of years. Orders were sent across dozens of systems. Fleets were activated. Ships that had been resting in orbit lit up with new purpose. Engineers worked through the night preparing jump drives and weapons. Medical teams were loaded onto carriers. Supplies were stacked into cargo holds. Entire battle groups prepared for long-range travel. Everywhere, crew members whispered to each other about the Tavri. They repeated the old tale, the small, delicate species that had once helped humans with nothing to gain. Some felt emotional pride. Others felt protective loyalty. But all agreed on one thing. The Tavri would not face danger alone. By the end of the day, humanity moved with a united resolve. They did not go for profit. They did not go for conquest. They went because someone had once reached a small, fragile hand toward them in the darkness, and that simple act had changed history. It was humanity's turn to reach back. And as the first human fleets left their home systems and curved through the stars toward the Tavri world, a quiet, powerful promise echoed across human space. A debt owed is a debt repaid. The Tavri homeworld was a quiet place once. It was a world of gentle winds, soft blue fields, and small floating lanterns that glowed at night. The Tavri lived simple lives, growing food and caring for their families. They avoided conflict and had little interest in power. They believed peace was the only true strength a species should aim for. For generations, this belief kept them safe. But the galaxy did not stay calm forever. Eventually, a large and aggressive empire spread across nearby star systems. This empire called itself the Jal Dominion. It was known throughout the galaxy for its strict rule and harsh expansion. Where the Jal arrived, control followed. Where they declared ownership, no one dared argue. Their fleets were heavy, their forces disciplined, and their leaders confident in their own superiority. When the Jal first discovered the Tavri world, they did not feel threatened. In fact, they barely reacted at all. They saw the Tavri as harmless, defenseless, and too small to be of any importance. Their planet was not rich in resources, but it was in a useful position, close to important trade routes and near several unclaimed asteroid fields. The Zhao did not think twice. They moved in. The Tavri were given no choice in the matter. They did not have an army. They did not have defense shields. They had only old, peaceful ships that had not been used in decades. When Zhao ships surrounded their world, the Tavri could do nothing but watch. The sky filled with the glowing trails of landing crafts. Towers of metal and steel rose where there used to be farmland. The Dominion declared the Tavri world under their control. At first, some Tavri believed the Zhao might bring improvements, new technology, stronger buildings, maybe even protection. But it soon became clear the Dominion had no interest in helping them. The Tavri were simply in the way. The Zhao built large structures where they wanted, changed natural rivers to support their machinery, and forced Tavri communities to move without explanation. The Tavri were expected to follow commands, keep quiet, and allow their planet to be reshaped into another Zhao outpost. The Tavri tried to stay hopeful. They told themselves the occupation might be temporary, or that the Zhao might eventually leave. But with each passing year, the Dominion tightened its grip. Patrol ships hovered in the sky at all hours. Loud announcements filled the streets, reminding everyone of rules, schedules, and restrictions. Tavri children were taught Zhao lessons in school, and their natural traditions were slowly pushed aside. From the outside, the galaxy noticed the takeover, but no one interfered. The Tavri were not powerful. They were not wealthy. They had no alliances. Helping them brought no benefit, so most species stayed silent. Many even assumed the Zhao would lose interest eventually. But the Dominion was not known for letting go easily. Once they took a world, they rarely gave it back. Inside Tavri homes, fear became a quiet companion. Families whispered about the old days. Elders talked about the single time long ago when they had helped a stranded group of humans. Some still remembered the human faces, tired, frightened, but grateful. But that memory felt like a dream now. No one expected humans to return. Too much time had passed. The galaxy had become large and dangerous. And humans had surely moved on. Still, in every Tavri settlement, there was at least one person who held on to the hope that someone, somewhere, might hear their call if they found a way to send it. That hope finally took shape the day a small group of Tavri uncovered a dusty storage room beneath an old science building. Inside that room were devices from earlier times, tools, damaged scanners, and a communication unit marked with symbols that no one had seen in decades. It was the same unit the humans had once given them as a gift of thanks. The device barely functioned, but the Tavri were determined. They cleaned it piece by piece. They replaced wires with whatever scraps they could find. They stayed up for nights, hoping to hear even a small beep of life from the machine. When the device finally powered on, weak and flickering, they felt a wave of relief. It was their last chance, their only chance. The Tavri gathered around the device. Their voices trembled as they recorded a message. It was short, soft, and almost whispered. They knew that the Zhao monitored most transmissions, so they kept the message vague but hopeful. After sending it, they hid the device and went back to their ordinary routines, trying not to look suspicious. They didn't know if anyone heard. They didn't know if the message reached even a single star. They only knew they had tried. While life continued under occupation, changes occurred in the Zhao Dominion. New leaders rose, eager to prove their strength. One such leader decided the Tavri world was an example of wasted potential. He wanted more control, more output, more obedience. Additional forces were sent to the planet. Strict new rules were put in place. Tavri movements were watched closely. The gentle species found themselves squeezed tighter than before. The Zhao believed that if anyone objected, they could simply crush those objections. After all, Who would challenge them over a small, irrelevant world like this? To them, the Tavri were not a threat. No one cared about them. No one would risk a war for such a tiny civilization. Their confidence grew, and their caution disappeared. But far away, in a part of the galaxy the Zhao rarely paid attention to, the Tavri's desperate message lit up a human listening station. At first, the signal looked like static. Then the system recognized an old identification code. The operator, confused at first, checked the records. The moment he realized what he was seeing, he alerted his commanders. The signal spread quickly through human networks. Every department that received it reacted with the same shock. The Tavri, the kind, small species from ancient human history, were alive, sending a call for help. It wasn't just an old story anymore. It was happening in the present. Human leadership held emergency meetings. This wasn't a situation of politics or economic gain. It was personal. It was a matter of honor, memory, and gratitude. Humanity had always believed that the Tavri deserved support if they ever needed it. Now the moment had arrived. Across human space, the reaction was instant and powerful. Civilians who heard about the signal sent messages of encouragement. Veterans shared stories of the old historical rescue. Students discussed it in schools. News networks talked about the forgotten friends who had once helped humanity during their weakest years. Within the military, preparation began immediately. Ships were fueled, loaded, and checked. Crews were called back from leave. Strategy rooms lit up with maps and plans. No one asked whether humanity should respond. They only asked how quickly they could reach the Tavri world. The Zhao Dominion had no idea what was coming. They had long dismissed humans as a distant, unimportant species. They believed humanity was still a minor presence, lacking real influence. They had not kept up with the rapid changes happening in human space. They did not know about the new fleets, new technology, or new unity humans had developed over the decades. They assumed humans would never challenge a large empire like theirs. And so, while the Zhao tightened their control over the Tavri, humanity moved with purpose across the stars. Ships formed into massive formations. Engines glowed with fierce determination. Messages were sent through every fleet. This mission was not about territory or power. It was about kindness returned, loyalty honored, and a promise finally kept. As the human fleets passed through jump gates and hyperspace lanes, the Tavri remained unaware. Their daily lives continued under watchful eyes. Their message had vanished into space weeks ago, and most of them had lost hope that anyone heard it. They believed their story would end quietly, forgotten by the galaxy. But in the deep reaches of space, the largest human force ever sent to aid a single world was racing toward them. Humanity had decided something simple and powerful. The Tavri would not be abandoned. And soon, the Zhao Dominion would learn that even a small act of kindness can echo across centuries and shake the galaxy in ways they never expected. When the Tavri sent their message into space, they hoped for a miracle, but prepared themselves for disappointment. Days passed, then weeks. Life under the Dominion continued exactly the same. Zhao patrol ships still flew overhead. Orders still echoed from metal speakers along the streets. Tavri adults still walked carefully, speaking softly so they would not attract unwanted attention. The message they had sent began to feel like a fading dream. But far across the galaxy, humanity was moving with purpose. In the heart of human space, massive docks circled bright stars. Dozens of enormous vessels rested there, some almost the length of a small moon. They were designed for long journeys and heavy responsibilities. Engineers worked day and night to prepare them. They checked every bolt, every shield generator, every engine coil. For once, no one complained about the long hours. Everyone knew why they were working, and it gave their hand strength. Young recruits talked excitedly in the hallways. Older crew members studied reports with serious eyes. Many had heard the ancient story of how the Tavri saved human explorers long ago, but they never thought they would witness the moment when humanity would repay that kindness. Some found it emotional that they were the ones chosen for this mission. Others felt a sense of duty so strong it made them stand straight or dot as the final preparations finished. The human fleets formed up into coordinated groups. Each fleet had different tasks: rescue operations, supplies, medical aid, diplomacy, and of course, defense. The largest fleet consisted of huge ships with layered hulls and powerful engines. Their job was to reach Tavri space first and break through any blockade the Dominion had set up. Quiet conversations filled the halls before departure. People spoke about what it meant to help someone who once helped humanity. They talked about how unusual this mission was, not for economic gain, not for territory, not for resources, but simply to honor a promise made generations earlier. When the order to launch finally came, the docks grew silent for a moment. Then, one by one, the gigantic vessels activated their engines. Light poured from beneath them as they lifted and aligned themselves. In perfect formation, the fleets moved away from human worlds, heading toward the dark stretch of space where the Tavri homeworld waited. Inside the command rooms, holographic maps showed their path. It was long, but every jump brought them closer. The leaders gave updates calmly, but inside, everyone felt the same mix of determination and anticipation. They were going to help a small species that the galaxy had forgotten. That mission gave them a deep sense of purpose. Meanwhile, the Jal Dominion remained unaware of the approaching fleets. The Dominion had grown overconfident, believing no one would dare challenge their control. Reports about human activity were not taken seriously. A few Jal officers noticed increased signals coming from human space, but they brushed it off as simple exercises. They had no idea a massive human force was on its way. On the Tavri world, the situation grew worse. Additional Jal ships arrived in orbit, and more troops walked through Tavri streets. The Dominion was preparing for a large-scale project they wanted to build on the planet, something that required strict control over the population. Tavri citizens felt it immediately. Curfews became tighter. Movement was restricted even more. Food shipments were limited. Tavri elders whispered to each other, afraid of what the Dominion planned next. But the Tavri did not know that. Far beyond the edge of their sky, human ships were quickly approaching. They traveled through jump gates, appearing for only a moment before vanishing into the next jump. At each stop, they checked their course, adjusted formation, and continued. When the Tavri signal first reached human space, there had been urgency. Now, as the ships neared their destination, that urgency grew even stronger. Inside one of the human vessels, the crew gathered in a wide room to hear the latest update. The message from leadership was simple. They were entering Tavri space soon. The crew held their breaths. Many had seen images of the Tavri in old records, small, gentle beings with soft movements. Some crew members had drawings of them pinned near their bunks, reminders of why this mission mattered. They were not going to fight for power. They were going to protect someone who once showed kindness to them. The last jump into Tavri space was quiet. The crew felt a heavy stillness in the ship. When the jump completed, the Tavri star system appeared before them. The first thing they saw was the bright blue glow of the Tavri homeworld. The second thing they saw was the Dominion blockade. A ring of dark Jal ships floated around the planet like metal thorns. They were arranged in a circle, forming a barrier that prevented any unknown vessel from approaching. The blockade was strong, but it was nothing the human fleet feared. They had prepared for this moment since the day the Tavri message was received. The human admiral spoke through the communication channels. Her voice was steady, but beneath that steadiness was a quiet determination everyone could feel. She ordered all ships to move forward in formation. The moment the Dominion ships detected them, warning signals flashed across JAL scanners. JAL commanders were shocked, not because someone had approached, but because of who had approached. They expected smugglers or small rebellious groups. They did not expect a large, organized, confident human fleet. Human ships advanced without hesitation. The JAL demanded they turn back. They warned that the planet was under Dominion control. They assumed humans would retreat at the threat. Instead, the human fleet continued forward. The Admiral sent a single, simple message to the JAL forces. Humanity was here to assist the Tavri, and they would not leave. The JAL reacted with disbelief. They had always treated humans as an insignificant species. They assumed humans were still developing, still inexperienced, still divided. They did not know the truth. They did not understand how far humanity had come, or how strong the bonds of loyalty ran through human history. Then the first human formation reached the blockade. What happened next was not loud or dramatic. It was controlled, measured, and efficient. The human ships moved with a precision the JAL had never seen. They used careful maneuvers, activating shields with perfect timing. They positioned themselves in ways that forced the JAL ships backward without causing unnecessary damage. The JAL were stunned at the level of coordination. It was not chaos. It was not wild fighting. It was a demonstration of controlled strength. Radiant beams of protective energy flashed around the human ships as they took positions directly between the planet and the Dominion forces. The JAL tried to push forward, but the human formation was like a wall. While the standoff continued in space, human landing vessels prepared to enter the Tavri atmosphere. They had medical teams, food supplies, and communication experts ready to meet the Tavri people. They had no intention of arriving as conquerors. They were arriving as protectors and friends. As the first landing vessels descended toward the Tavri homeworld, the Tavri on the surface stared up at the sky. They saw bright streaks of light, thinking at first that they were more JAL ships. Fear rose in their hearts. But then the symbols on the vessels became clearer. They were not JAL markings, they were human markings. For a long moment, the Tavri stood frozen, unsure if they were dreaming. Then the truth spread like a soft wave across the planet. Humans had come. The message had reached them. The Tavri were not forgotten after all. On every street, Tavri looked toward the sky with wide eyes. Some covered their mouths in disbelief. Some trembled with relief. Some cried quietly. And in that emotional silence, the first human vessel landed gently on Tavri soil. As the doors opened and human boots stepped onto the ground, one simple, powerful feeling filled the air. The Tavri were not alone anymore, and some were above them. The JAL Dominion finally realized they had underestimated humanity in the worst possible way. When the first human vessel touched the Tavri ground, the air felt different, almost like the planet itself was holding its breath. The Tavri gathered in quiet groups, unsure if they should approach or keep a respectful distance. For so long, the only ships that landed on their world belonged to the Dominion. Those ships always brought fear, demands, and orders. But this new vessel sat calmly, without alarms, without noise, almost as if it was trying to say, "We mean no harm." The door opened slowly. A group of human representatives stepped out, not soldiers holding weapons, but people dressed in calm, clean uniforms meant for communication and aid. They walked forward carefully, with open hands and relaxed expressions. Their movements showed respect for the Tavri's space, as if they understood how delicate this moment was. For a few seconds, no one spoke. Then one Tavri elder stepped forward. His voice was soft when he asked, "Did you hear us?" His tone carried years of fear and a tiny spark of hope. The human leader nodded gently and replied, "Yes, we heard you." We came because you once helped us. Today, we repay that kindness." The Tavri elder trembled, unable to hide his emotion. Even the human representatives felt their hearts tighten at the sight. Around them, more Tavri slowly approached. Some reached out to touch the smooth metal of the human ship, as if to confirm it was real. Others stood still, trying to stop their tears from falling. They had lived under the Dominion for so long that kindness felt foreign, almost unbelievable. While the Tavri and humans met on the surface, the situation in space remained tense. The human fleet formed a protective shield around the planet. Dominion ships hovered nearby, watching with frustration and disbelief. They sent repeated messages claiming the planet as their property, demanding that the humans withdraw. But the humans refused to argue. Their only message back was polite but firm. They were here to help the Tavri, not to fight unless absolutely necessary. The Dominion commanders were confused. They were used to dealing with species that surrendered easily or abandoned their allies. They had never expected humans to send such a large force just to protect a small, peaceful species. They convinced themselves that the humans were bluffing, that they wouldn't risk a long conflict over the Tavri, but the calm confidence of the human fleet made them uneasy. On the ground, the humans began moving quickly. They set up medical tents to examine the Tavri who had suffered under the Dominion's restrictions. They distributed food supplies made for long missions, offering it freely to every Tavri family. They connected communication equipment to help the Tavri speak with human command centers. They even brought small gifts, blankets, lights, and tools that could make the Tavri's daily life easier. Every Tavri who met the humans felt something strange, relief mixed with pride. They had once helped these beings when humanity was young and weak. Now, the same beings had returned, stronger than anyone expected, offering help without expecting anything in return. Human engineers walked through damaged Tavri towns, making notes of what needed repair. They scanned broken water lines and destroyed farming areas, promising they would rebuild them. They repaired communication towers that the Dominion had restricted. Tavri children followed the engineers, watching with bright eyes as human tools beeped and flashed. Some humans knelt to show the children how the devices worked, and the Tavri kids giggled, amazed by the new technology. Meanwhile, human diplomats met with Tavri elders. They sat in outdoor meeting spaces, surrounded by curious Tavri families. The diplomats spoke with sincerity, explaining why humanity had come. "Long ago, you pulled our people out of danger," the human spokesperson said. "You had nothing, yet you shared whatever you could. We never forgot that, and we will never allow those who once helped us to suffer alone." The Tavri elders bowed their heads, deeply touched. They had expected nothing when they sent the desperate message. They certainly did not expect a full human fleet to arrive. The idea that humans remembered them for centuries was almost overwhelming. As humans worked, the Tavri began to feel safe for the first time in decades. Tavri families welcomed the humans into their homes, offering small meals even though food was limited. They shared stories about their old traditions, their songs, and how they used to celebrate festivals before the Dominion's arrival. Humans listened with quiet respect. Some even helped the Tavri clean forgotten decorations, preparing to restore their cultural practices. At the edge of one village, a group of humans and Tavri worked together to clear a ruined field. As they removed debris, a Tavri elder explained that the field once grew their favorite crops. A human engineer listened carefully and then said gently, "We can bring this field back." The elder smiled for the first time in years. But as humans helped rebuild Tavri communities, the Dominion grew frustrated. Their commanders were not used to being ignored. They sent stronger warnings. They tried to intimidate the human fleet with large displays of their vessels. But every time they tried to escalate the situation, the human fleet responded calmly and strategically. positioning their ships in defensive patterns. That showed they were ready for anything, but not eager for conflict. What unsettled the Dominion the most was humanity's discipline. There was no panic, no fear, no aggression without cause. The Dominion had built its power on dominating weaker species. But humans did not behave like a weak species. They moved with quiet purpose, like a civilization that mattered, a civilization that had learned from every hard lesson in its past. Back on the planet, the Tavri grew more confident as the hours passed. They began to sing their gentle songs in the evening, something they had been afraid to do for years. Human visitors paused to listen to the soft, echoing melodies. Some closed their eyes, letting the music settle in their hearts. As night fell, human lights lit up Tavri villages. Medical tents glowed softly. Engineers continued repairing damaged buildings. Human guards took positions, not to intimidate, but to reassure the Tavri that they were safe. The Tavri watched them with quiet gratitude, amazed at how far humans had come since the days when they had rescued that weak, stranded human ship. Later that night, Tavri elders gathered with the human representatives. One Tavri elder said, "We did not know if our message would reach you. We believed we had faded from your memory." The human leader smiled gently and replied, "A good deed is never forgotten, especially not one done when we had nothing." Those words became something the Tavri repeated again and again to their people. It became a phrase that filled them with strength. Meanwhile, human command centers sent updates across their fleets. Every human ship in orbit knew exactly what was happening on the ground. Traders, civilians, and officers on distant human colonies heard about the mission too. Across human space, people talked proudly about how their species kept old promises. They said it felt good to know humanity had grown not just in power, but in heart. The Dominion continued to threaten, but the humans ignored the noise. Their focus stayed on the Tavri. They built temporary shelters, fixed broken systems, and made sure the Tavri had enough food and resources to live without fear. They taught Tavri volunteers how to use simple human devices so they could help maintain the repairs in the future. It was not just protection. It was empowerment. As the second day ended, Tavri children gathered near a human ship, asking in their small voices if the humans were going to stay. The humans answered with smiles, saying they would stay as long as needed. The children clapped and danced, their tiny bells ringing softly. When night fell again, the Tavri world seemed lighter, brighter, more alive than it had been in years. The Dominion had taken much from them, but the humans had given them something the Dominion could never provide: hope. And above the planet, the Dominion watched the growing human presence with a rising sense of unease. They realized something they had never considered before. Humanity was not just powerful. Humanity was loyal, and a loyal species was far more dangerous than a powerful one, because once humans decided to protect someone, they would not stop. They would not bend. They would not abandon those who once offered them kindness. The Dominion commanders looked at the vast human fleet surrounding the planet and finally understood the truth. Debt had been repaid, and the galaxy would soon feel the consequences. The news of what humans had done for the Tavri spread across the galaxy faster than anyone expected. At first, only a few small channels talked about it, the kind of channels that usually focused on trade routes or weather patterns on faraway moons. But once the first recordings from Tavri space reached the wider networks, everything changed. The galaxy suddenly had a new topic to argue about: fear, admire, or worry over. The first recording that went viral showed the human fleet arriving. Not firing, not threatening, not yelling commands, just arriving in perfect order. Row after row of ships, each one moving with quiet confidence. There was something strange about that confidence. It wasn't loud. It wasn't arrogant. It was steady, focused, and a little unsettling. Most large empires flexed their strength by making noise. Humans did the opposite. They moved like they had already planned every detail. Like they didn't need to brag because they knew exactly what they were capable of. That was what frightened many alien watchers. The most people who sat in trading stations, mining outposts, or distant colonies stopped what they were doing to stare at the screen. Many tilted their heads or blinked their eyes, not sure if the footage was edited. Some people asked if the humans were showing off. Others believed the humans were simply like this all the time, and no one had bothered to notice until now. That a second recording appeared. It showed human officers walking through a damaged Tavri town with calm, steady steps. There were no threats, no shouting. They didn't treat the Tavri like weak creatures. Instead, they listened, checked injuries, and helped rebuild broken shelters. The Tavri, tiny compared to the large armored humans, looked up with a mix of surprise and relief. That video touched the galaxy far more deeply than any battle footage could. It was simple and quiet. A human handing a small Tavri child a food pack. A group of humans fixing a broken bridge. A Tavri elder placing a hand on a human's arm, trembling but grateful. Moments like these traveled through the galaxy as fast as any rumor. Many species who had never met a human before started to wonder if the stories they'd heard were wrong. For years, common belief said humans were still a small, loud species that enjoyed exploration more than responsibility. Some thought humans were impulsive, always rushing forward without thinking. Others believed humans were too emotional to ever become a strong force in the galaxy. But these new recordings didn't match those old ideas at all. Meanwhile, inside the meeting halls of major governments, leaders sat around glowing tables and watched the same footage, but their reactions were very different. They didn't focus on the kindness. They focused on the discipline, on the speed, on the heavy ships that arrived without hesitation, on the way humans moved like they had fought battles before, even though they never bragged about it. Some officials felt uneasy, even nervous. In their private reports, they wrote simple but worrying observations. If this is how humans respond to a simple request for help, imagine how they would respond to a real attack. Their strength is not in numbers. It is in unity. No one realized how advanced their technology has become. What else have they built in silence? In one of the central empires, a group of advisors stood before a senior council and played the footage several times. Each time, the room grew quieter. One advisor leaned forward and whispered. They did all of this because the Tavri helped a single ship centuries ago. Another replied, imagine what they would do for someone closer to them. A third added, or what they would do if someone hurt one of their own. The council members did not like thinking about that, but they could not deny it. Humans had proven something powerful. They were loyal, deeply loyal. Loyalty that could move entire fleets. Loyalty that could turn the course of a war. Loyalty that could change political maps. Some empires valued loyalty, and they started thinking about alliances. They wondered if it might be wise to make friends with humans before someone else did. Others, however, interpreted that loyalty as a warning. If humans protected their allies so fiercely, they might also defend their territory with equal intensity. That idea frightened them. A few empires began quiet military reviews. They didn't say it out loud, but the reason was obvious. No one wanted to be caught unprepared if things changed in the future. But among ordinary citizens, the reaction was very different. People in crowded markets and busy orbital stations began to talk about humans with curiosity rather than fear. Some admired their courage. Some admired their kindness. Many simply felt surprised. How did we ignore them for so long? One traveler asked while watching the footage at a station cafe. They kept to themselves, another replied. They were exploring, growing, learning, and no one paid attention. But look at them now, a third person added. They came when the Tavri called, without asking for anything in return. A small group of Tavri traders traveling to a neutral hub station found themselves surrounded by friendly strangers. Instead of fear or pity, they heard compliments about their human friends. "You're lucky," a miner from a distant asteroid belt told them. "The humans really care about you." A Tavri elder bowed his head slightly and whispered, "We never expected them to remember us." But they did. The wider galaxy kept watching. And through all this, the Zhao Dominion, the empire responsible for the occupation, grew uneasy. They tried to act confident. Their spokespeople said the humans had exaggerated everything. They claimed the Tavri situation had been under control. They called the human response unnecessary interference. But privately, their strategists knew the truth. They had underestimated the humans. Completely inside a dim strategy room, several Dominion officers reviewed holographic reports. A junior officer mentioned the human ships again, how they were arranged, how they reacted, how advanced they looked. A senior commander raised a hand and said, "The galaxy believes humans are simply emotional creatures who acted on loyalty. But look at this footage carefully. Look at the flight patterns. Look at the formations. Those aren't emotional reactions. Those are trained responses." Another strategist added, "We should treat this event as a signal. Humans may not be seeking conflict, but they are not weak. And they have allies now." A silence spread across the room as the officers considered the future. None of them wanted to be responsible for provoking a species capable of such decisive actions. Outside these private rooms, the story kept spreading. Channels replayed human ships landing gently on Tavri soil. They replayed Tavri children smiling again. They replayed humans guiding elders away from collapsed structures with calm and care. Every little act of kindness added more to the story. People began repeating a few simple words. Humans repay their debts. Some said it with admiration. Some said it with surprise. Some said it with quiet fear. But no matter how they said it, everyone understood the deeper meaning behind it. The galaxy had always been divided. Old rivalries, silent grudges, and political games filled every corner of known space. For most civilizations, promises meant little, and help often came with a price. But the humans had arrived not for profit, not for territory, and not to show dominance. They arrived for a promise made across centuries. And they kept it in a small transport hub. An old pilgrim from a distant species watched one of the viral clips and smiled softly. "Interesting," he said. "Some species chase power. Some chase control. But the humans, they chase something else. Something deeper." A young traveler asked, "What do they chase?" The old pilgrim replied, "Honor." That word echoed in many places across the galaxy. Honor, loyalty, unpredictable, strength. These ideas mixed together and created a new image of humanity. Not perfect, not flawless, but capable of things no one had expected. And as the galaxy quietly shifted its view of humans, a new understanding began to form, whether people liked it or not. If humans decided to stand with someone, they stood fully. If humans decided to protect someone, they didn't hesitate. If humans chose loyalty, they didn't break it. And if someone threatened their allies, the galaxy now understood what would happen. They would answer. Completely, the galaxy watched, waited, and whispered among itself, wondering what this meant for the future. The balance of power had changed. It might not be obvious yet, but everyone felt the shift. Like a subtle vibration that passed through every star system, the humans had acted out of kindness. But their kindness had revealed a strength far greater than anyone had imagined. And now, the galaxy couldn't ignore them anymore. When the humans finished rebuilding the Tavri, towns and repairing the damage left by the Dominion forces. The Tavri elders asked for a small gathering on their main council plateau. It wasn't a grand ceremony. Tavri culture didn't believe in loud celebrations or massive shows of power. Instead, they stood under their soft blue sky, with quiet winds brushing past the tall crystal rocks, and invited the human commanders to stand with them. One of the Tavri elders, a gentle figure with thin silver markings on the sides of their face, stepped forward. They held a small piece of carved stone in their trembling hands. The crowd of Tavri fell silent. "We helped one human ship long ago," the elder said softly, their voice unsteady yet warm. "We never expected anything in return. But today, we see that humans do not forget kindness." The elder lifted the carved stone and offered it to the human representative. The carved lines on its surface told the story of the old rescue from centuries earlier. "This is our memory stone," the elder continued. "A reminder of the day we saved a lost ship. But now it is also a symbol of how you saved our world." The humans accepted the stone with deep respect, not as a trophy, but as a promise. That simple moment marked something that would echo across the galaxy, far longer than any battle report. Not everyone in the galaxy saw that gathering, but news of it spread quickly. The Tavri had joined humanity not as subjects or followers, but as friends, equal partners in a new treaty called the Human Coalition Pact. The pact wasn't about power. It wasn't about demands. It simply stated that the Tavri would always have a place among humans, and humans would always protect them. The pact was so straightforward, so honest, that many other species found themselves confused. Most treaties between major civilizations were filled with complicated rules, hidden deals, and long contracts. But the humans wrote their pact in clear language, almost so simple that it felt odd by galactic standards. A small researcher from a distant world stared at the translated copy of the pact and whispered, "Is that all? Just protection, trade, and friendship?" Another scholar replied, "Humans don't overcomplicate everything. They mean what they say." This simplicity was both comforting and unsettling. Comforting because it showed humans had no hidden agenda. Unsettling because it meant humans had enough confidence not to need tricks or complicated diplomacy. Meanwhile, back among the humans on Tavri soil, the work continued. They didn't just rebuild buildings. They taught the Tavri new farming methods, upgraded their water systems, and shared medical technology that the Tavri had never seen before. The Tavri weren't forced to accept anything. They chose what they wanted, asked questions, and took their time. The humans didn't rush them. More Tavri children began to wander near the human camps, curious about the tall, armored figures who smelled faintly of metal and carried strange devices. The humans joked with them, handed them small, harmless tools to play with, and showed them how to fix simple things. Laughter began to return to Tavri towns, something that had been missing for a long time. But while the Tavri world healed, the galaxy around them entered a strange new era. In distant diplomatic halls, leaders discussed humans almost every day. Some were nervous. Others were impressed. A few were openly excited. The galaxy had always believed that humans were latecomers, interesting, energetic, but harmless. Now, that opinion had changed completely. One council on a distant station argued for hours over a single question. Should we consider asking the humans for an alliance? Some members hesitated. "They are unpredictable," one counselor said. "They act from emotion." Another counselor shook their head. "No, they act from loyalty. That is different. And that is far more dangerous." A third counselor added quietly, "We have grown too used to empires that only help when there is profit. The humans helped without asking for anything. That makes them more powerful than any fleet." Even the Zhao Dominion, the same empire that had occupied the Taviri, felt the change. Their leaders knew they couldn't attack openly anymore. The humans had made one thing very clear. Harming their allies would not be tolerated. Inside a dark strategy chamber, one Dominion officer studied a hologram of human space. "We could push back," he said quietly. "We could try to intimidate them." But another officer shook his head. "That would be a mistake. They didn't come for war. They came for a promise. If we provoke them again, they will come for far more." A long silence followed. No one dared to argue. Not long after the Tavri world stabilized, more species began reaching out to humans, not for war, not for weapons, but for help, partnership, and guidance. Messages from isolated colonies, forgotten settlements, and small civilizations started arriving at human communication hubs. Some asked for protection, some asked for trade, some asked simply to talk. Humans realized something unexpected had happened. Their single act of loyalty had changed how many saw them. They were no longer visitors on the edge of the galaxy. They were becoming a central force, but the humans never claimed to be heroes. They never stood tall and said they would protect everyone. Instead, they responded in a calm, simple way. They would help where they could, and they wouldn't abandon anyone who had shown them kindness. In the following months, the Tavri flourished under the new peace. Their towns were brighter. Their markets were full again. Their children played without fear, and humans became a familiar sight on their streets, not as conquerors, but as trusted friends. A small Tavri storyteller sat in a rebuilt park one day, surrounded by a group of younglings, telling them a story that would become famous. "Once, we saved a drifting ship," the storyteller said. "We thought it was a small act, soon to be forgotten. But the humans remembered. And because of that memory, they crossed the stars to save us. They did not count the cost. They did not ask for gifts. They came because their hearts told them to keep their promise." One of the younglings asked, "Will the humans stay with us forever?" The storyteller smiled. "Not forever, but long enough to make sure we stand strong again. And even when they are far away, their promise will still protect us." Far beyond the Tavri system, human diplomats began traveling to new worlds, carrying the same message. Humanity wanted peace, friendship, and cooperation. But they also made clear that they would defend their allies if needed. Many species respected this. Others feared it. But none ignored it. In one peaceful meeting on a neutral space station, a representative from a small species asked a human diplomat, "Why do you care so much? Why do you go so far for people who barely know you?" The human replied softly, "Because when someone shows us kindness, we don't forget. And when someone needs us, we don't walk away." That simple answer spread through the galaxy like a quiet whisper. It reached places humans had never been. It reached minds that had never considered humans important before. In time, rumors began that the humans were building something deeper, a network of allies who trusted them, not out of fear, but out of respect. The Tavri were the first, but not the last. Slowly, the galaxy shifted. Some empires grew uneasy. Others grew hopeful. Some watched in silent curiosity. But the truth was clear. Humanity had changed the balance of power without starting a war, without forcing anyone to bow, and without demanding anything in return. A gentle but powerful message spread everywhere. If you stand with humans, you will never stand alone. One evening, as the sun set on the Tavri homeworld and the sky turned a soft purple, a Tavri elder looked up and whispered a quiet thought that many others across the galaxy would soon agree with. "Once we protected,